number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 351 of Sports Card Nation podcast. As always, glad to be back this week, and always I say I have a great guest, but I really do believe that and feel that. And this week, no different. It's a gentleman I've been looking forward to having on. Part one is this week. And one thing I appreciate about the gentleman on this week's episode is he kind of calls it like he sees it, and he's very honest. Even when he's made mistakes himself, he's talked about those. And, it's easy to always talk about your W's, right? Anybody, I don't want to say anybody, but it's easier to talk about W's. I think it's harder to talk about L's or tough spots. And I know I've done it on this show with, different mistakes I've made through many years of trial and error. And this gentleman is like that as well. And he's adapted and fixed things that were causing some hobby strife, if you will, and he shared that with his audience, and I thought that was very refreshing. So today's guest, Dustin from Sports Card Dad, today will be part one of our two-part conversation. So with that being said, let's get to the show. All right, excited to have my next guest, a gentleman on the Sports Card Nation guest line. He's a content creator in his own right. We have some things that some similarities we share, and some criticisms we share that we're going to tackle. But we're going to talk a gamut of hobby stuff as well. Dustin, Sports Card Dad, welcome.
John, thanks for having me on. I've been watching your show for years. It's kind of a full circle moment for me. I've been probably watching since I started making content like 2020, so it's...
Yeah, listen, even 2018 here, 2020, like you just said, those are, when we look at content creation now, we're like some of the OGs, not to pat ourselves on the back, but, I'm sure you've heard that. I've gotten that. Now there's a ton of it, but, I know you'll agree, even when you started in the 2 years before that, when I did, there was a lot less, right? A lot less terrain with content. And I think it's a good, someone asked me, is all the content good or bad? I think it's both. It can be both. I guess it depends on the content itself. And that stuff sort of works itself out, I believe. Would you... I'll give you a chance to sort of respond. You feel like the same way?
Yeah, there's so many different shows and personalities now. I can remember, and you were in it, like you said, in 2018 and 2020. I felt like I would put out a video. So when I started in March 2020, I made kind of a goal for myself. I'm going to put out a video every single day. And it was during the pandemic, so I had time. And, that was my goal of, hey, I'm going to start this YouTube channel. I love talking about cards, collectibles. I'm just going to try to stick to that one video every single day. It's not going to be flashy. It'll be 7 to 10 minutes. Sometimes they were 15, but it was going to be kind of something that I do as a routine during the pandemic. And man, there was nothing. I would post and there would be, like people also talking about hobby news and hobby topics. I don't want to say there was nothing, but there was nowadays, I post my video and it feels like there's 100 other channels posting, about, different various, hobby topics.
Yeah, no doubt. And one thing, and I too listen to or watch a lot of your content as well. One thing I appreciate, we kind of talk about the parallels in content creation, right? There's some content creators or shows, and all they do is talk about the wins and all the great purchases, and I bought it for this and I sold it for that, and they never share like, hey, I lost on this product, or I lost on prospecting this guy, or I opened a case of that and it was bad, right? And I try to I'll share good stories, but also say, hey, I shared how I got it, ran up a credit card debt of $10K on opening wax. It didn't happen overnight, but it snuck up on me, and how that's one of the reasons I don't open wax anymore. Right, you learn the hard way. You've been pretty transparent. One thing again that I really appreciate about you, I try to be like that. Is like, hey, share the whole picture, not just the good parts of the story, right? And hopefully, right, hopefully there's more good parts than bad parts, but tell the whole story rather than just the good parts. And you did that, even talking about purchasing too many cards, and again, kind of sneaks up on you. Talk about that instance in your hobby life, and was it difficult to really share that, like, to everyone else, or maybe not really?
Well, I thought, actually I talked to my wife before I posted that video, and she said, you're going to get you could get a lot of blowback on that video. You might get a lot of people that laugh at you or think that you're an idiot or any of that. And I was thinking though, but I can't be the only one. I've got it. It's got to be relatable, and it's honest, and it's what's going on. And that's when I started my channel, it was never to be your hobby card expert, because I'm not an expert now, and I wasn't 5 years ago. So, it was always like, hey, this is my journey. I'm buying and selling these cards. I'm flipping these to buy that. And, back in 2020, 2021, it was easy to flip cards. I was like, man, I'm great at this. Everybody was great at it. If you had bought any cards like prior to 2020, they went up in price. You could sell them. And I'm sure you had a lot of cards that appreciated heading into 2021, so I was able to flip cards like a lot of people. But what happened is we got kind of towards the end of 2021, prices started to pull back. I was making money from my channel, so that was helping to kind of subsidize buys, but I still wasn't being careful enough with, and I wasn't being, it's not as if I was spending the mortgage money on cards. I was still paying the bills, but there was disposable income there that just went to cards, and I wasn't having a conversation with my wife about it. And it could, look, you've got a family, I've got a family. There's always money to go somewhere for the kids. It can go to retirement or college, vacation. It can go to fix the house. It can go anywhere. So the fact that I wasn't being transparent enough with her about my spending, and again, and I was trying to be transparent in that video too, that first video. And this was, I think, January of 2022. So about 3 years ago is when I made it. I was trying to be transparent in that I wasn't losing the house. I wasn't trying to be overly dramatic, but I was trying to be honest about, because I felt like this could be something that could happen to anybody. And this was buying singles. This wasn't buying into breaks. This wasn't buying into repacks and into hobby boxes, which frankly, I mean, if you look at the marketing in the hobby, I mean, that's really that's the target. That's really where they're trying to get you in, is for more of the gambling products. And so I wanted to also share, hey, look, it's not just that. I'm getting sucked in on just buying singles, and I'm still, kind of overspending in the sense that I wasn't being honest with my wife and transparent. Boxes are coming in the mail. I'm running up the stairs with them, and people will joke about that online, but you got to find a balance with it. And so I shared that video, and I ended up getting a great response from it. Actually, I did get a little bit of blowback, but it was like 90%, positive. Thanks for sharing. And 10% was kind of like, they laughed at me, and that's okay.
Well, that 10%, Dustin, would have complained about whatever that video, I believe, right? There's that segment,
Yeah,
of the hobby that just sort of negative. It is what it is. I took from it, like, it's a very human moment, and you were using it sort of as a teaching moment. Like, hey, this can happen. I don't care who you are. I don't know. It doesn't matter your income level. I mean, it was nice. It was good that it wasn't affecting like your living arrangements or food on the table. But you know what? The sad thing is there are people who even go even further than what you were sharing, where that is what's happening, and it's ended relationships and marriages. It's caused problems in households to even a different level. And I appreciated that. I don't know how easy or hard it was, but I commend you for it, because I don't think anyone can do that. And you did it in a way where you put yourself out there, knowing, like, some people are going to like be critical, but it also there's probably a bunch of people. I'm sure you got some of this feedback, right? That said, "Hey, I'm sort of in that same boat, Dustin. Like,
Oh yeah.
thanks for turning that light bulb on, and we realize like this is happening." And so I'm sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, in a weird way, it's embarrassing. Obviously, you're sharing it to the public, but it's also an accountability measure in a way too, because I've shared it publicly, and my wife knows I've shared it publicly. Like my friends know, like people know, and so now it's almost like, okay, I put that out there, so people know. So I have to. It also helps me to check myself because I have shared that information that I need to kind of watch things a little bit, and it did help me. We just kind of rebudgeted the way that it happened. I made that video, I think like the first week of January. And what we always do is at the end of the year, the calendar year, we take a look at our, what the money coming in, the money going out, what are we investing here and there, and the debts and this and that, and trying to figure out where money is going. And that's where we were like, damn, you spent a lot of money on cards this year, and so that's where we had that conversation. And then, it turned into, okay, we need to kind of make some adjustments. We made the adjustments. I stuck to that. And that's but it helped me to stick to it because I was public with it, and I think that was, so I was breaking it to her, but I was also breaking it to my hobby friends and viewers. So it's kind of it's embarrassing, but it's also can be a helpful tool as well.
Well, I get the embarrassing. Even when I talked about that wax that was run up, it's not nothing you're proud of, right? But it's also, I was using it as, and I'm sure you were your story, right, as a teaching moment. Like this stuff can happen. Doesn't matter who you are, where you live. Even in other hobbies, I'm sure there's similar stories in all parts of life. So. The difference, it's funny, and I've told this story in the air, and I'll make this shorter than when I tell it. When I was dating my wife, she wasn't even my fiance yet, or no, she was my fiance. I've had a business account since I was 15. That's when I did my first card show. And I remember we were at the dinner table out somewhere, and she goes, "What are you going to do with your business account?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What am I going to do with my business account?" And she goes, "Well, like marriage is a partnership." And I'm like, "It is. I'm 100% in agreement with that." But the hobby, like, if we're gonna be partners in the hobby? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna help me ship or pack? No. I'm like, "Well," and at the time, Dustin, she was a little like peeved. Like it was, I wasn't rude about it, but I was like, "No, it's gonna be separate." I think she at the time she was viewing it as like an escape hatch. Like if this doesn't work out, like he's got a little, live on that and leave and blah blah blah. That's not what it's for. And I said to her, I said, "You don't realize today, but you're going to really appreciate that I have this separate account. Today you don't, but someday you will." And so when I talk about like when I bought my Jackie rookie, like that came out of my money, not the joint account money. When I ran up that that debt, that didn't come out of the joint money, or I'd be, and again, it wasn't affecting and same thing here, wasn't affecting me paying my bills or putting food on the table and that sort of thing. What was nice is I handled it without affecting like our interior joint account finance. So when I
Yeah.
bought that Jackie rookie, which was now almost 3 years ago, she doesn't know a lot about cards, and she's very supportive, but she doesn't know you know what something's worth. But I'm like, "Hey, I got my Grail card," and I showed it to her. "Oh, that's cool." And she rarely will ask, doesn't like if I do a show like a card show as a dealer. Like she might ask how you do in general terms, like it was a good, yeah, it was a great show. But I give her credit. She never asked like, "Hey, how much money did you make?" or "How great was it?" Well, with the Jackie card, like the Leaf, she's like, "How much did that cost? Can I ask?" And then when I told her, like her jaw hit the floor. And I'm like, now you like that business account because not $1 came from our money. That was all from being a dealer, some content creation. She goes, "Yeah, I get it now." I'm like, "You didn't get it, 23 years ago or 22 years ago, but she gets it now." So that sort of keeps me out of trouble. And I think too, and obviously I've eliminated that credit card debt, and you learn I'm not going back there, right? You go down an alley and you get hit over the head with a bat, and then you run down the alley again, get hit over the head. At some point, the light bulb goes on. Like, I'm not going in that alley anymore. So for me, it was that opening wax and buying boxes, and it was fun. Don't get me wrong. We've all opened stuff. It's one of the most fun things to do in the hobby. But when the smoke clears and the dust settles, there's a bill to pay. And I learned sometimes the bill's more than what you get. And so I use it. And I'm sure you did this with your story. It's like a cautionary tale. Like, be careful. I was able to pay that off. You were able to get a game plan and make sure that it doesn't happen again. Sometimes maybe people can't do that, and then it could be too late. So, I looked at both of those stories, while different in terms of, but similar as they can be teaching moments, right? So maybe prevent someone else a heartache or financial strain.
Well, and I think it's challenging too, because most people are using their job money, for the hobby. So if you're going to have the hobby pay for itself, you're either making money flipping cards or, buying and selling cards, which, then you'll have people like, oh, you're a flipper or this and that, you're not a collector. But it's like, this is a buy, sell, trade hobby. You can't, not everybody can just, we're not all, zillionaires that can just keep on pumping money into it. Some people can, and that's great. But, for most people, you're buying, selling, trading, and that's fun, but that's also funding your PC items or whatever. For us, we have content that's helping to pay, for the hobby. So, but that's the hobby paying for itself. If we didn't have, I can't speak for you, but if my channel if it didn't grow the way that it did, I wouldn't have the collection I've got. I wouldn't be able to do it, So as the channel has grown, that's given me the ability to get better cards and to get better collectibles and other things, But if that didn't happen, then, I would be out of luck. I wouldn't have the same sort of collection unless I would have to find another way. I'd have to be a prolific flipper. I'd have to be, I'd have to find another way. So it's challenging.
Time for a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Thanks for sticking with us. Let's return to the show.
I'm pretty transparent. Why I won't give out figures in that. I've the show has sponsors. It gets paid per download and all that good stuff. I don't hide behind that or deny it. That's true. But a lot, like you just said, Dustin, and some people, we're going to talk about this a little bit, might be critical of that. But a good percentage of that, if not in some cases all of it, depending on the time of year, month, goes right back in the hobby and transacts the hobby and keeps that going. I've been, I hear the term, and I'm sure you've heard it, right? True collector. If you sell cards, you're not a true collector, which I actually disagree with. I'm surrounded by cards. Some of them are on camera now. I have a PC. When I do a show, like, there's a lot of stuff that's not with me at the show that will never be at the show with me. And those are PC items. And so a lot of times, I have a good show. That money goes back into shoot for new show inventory, and it also goes into PC items. And those are transactions. But I always laugh, like, when people say, oh, you're not a true collector if you sell something. And I laugh at that because, what you got to get your cards from someone who's saying that. You got to get your cards from somewhere. You're probably buying them from somebody, most likely. Whether that's, if it's wax, you're buying that from a wax dealer, or singles, you're buying it from a dealer. So I once asked somebody, like, what is the definition of a true collector? Like, what is it? Tell me. I'm in New York, so a lot of people say, "Oh, he's a true Yankee," and
Mhm.
I always thought a true Yankee, someone that's drafted by them, stays in the system, and then comes up and plays for the organization. When you ask a Yankee fan, they all have like different definition. Oh, just he epitomizes what it. So whenever I ask someone to mention true collector, they either hem or haw don't have a really good definition, or they say you don't sell. True collectors don't sell their cards, and there's very few people who've never sold. Even people who aren't necessarily card sellers have sold a card. So, like, to say that, I always kind of shrug my shoulders. Like, I'm sure you've heard
Yeah, I mean,
thrown around.
it's all relative too. I mean, a lot of the collectors, that I've seen, I mean, they're financially established. They're older. They might be 50, 55, 60 plus, and they don't really need the money. I mean, or maybe they're younger, maybe they're 30, but they're buying lower end cards. So I could have binders of lower end cards, and technically I don't need to sell them. Maybe they're 50-cent dollar cards that go in the binder. So it really depends on the situation, but it's kind of to be a long-term holder, you have to be financially established. If you're buying mid-end to high-end stuff, then I just don't know lots of people that are 20, 25 that are set up in life to where they're ready to have long-term holds on high-end stuff. Most of the 25-year-olds are flipping because they're building a life. They're building they are building a business in the hobby, or they're doing it as a side hustle, or they're about to start a family. Or, I mean, like you and I I'm going to be 45 next year. Like I'm done having kids, like I'm kind of on I'm on the back nine, we're on the back nine, so
I'm on the back three, Dustin.
So
yeah, I'm 52. So yeah.
So we've kind of gotten established to where we can hold some cards. Now I'm not trying to hold every last thing, but I mean, there's certain cards like your Jackie, for example, that's a card that you don't necessarily need to move on that card, so I just think it's all relative, but most of the time, to be financially established, you're not 20, you're older, and you've got some years on some of the other people.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a great point. And, hobby your way, right? Again, try to stay out of trouble, try to be financially sound. But you're right. I think that younger set, and, you mentioned the national. I mean, even like that's coming, and we're recording this before the event. This will probably air after the fact. But, even for me, like I like to go to the national and buy a couple decent cards, 4 figures. But to do that, I've talked about it. It's not a secret. I've even written about it in an article. Like I really don't buy anything of significance the 3 months before the national. Just putting money away,
That's good
saving
discipline.
it up.
That's good discipline.
Yeah. And I've gotten better. Listen, full disclosure, I've gotten better as an older person doing that than the younger version of me that would do it. I share this with someone. I stole this from a friend of mine. He's going to Las Vegas like 2 to 3 times a year. And, he had a decent job, but I'm like, how are you going on all these trips to Vegas? And he's like, the dollar envelope. And I'm like, the dollar envelope? He goes, yeah. And he told me what he does is every day, when he's home for the day and he's not going back out, any ones he has in his pocket, he puts in an envelope and forgets about them. At the end of the year, you put them in bands of 50, and he says, I have, it depends on the year, but anywhere from like 900 to $1,500. He goes, you ought to do it. And he goes, you save money, you don't even realize it, like they're ones.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, I'm going to do. And this was even before I was going to the national, Dustin. And I did it. And the first year I did it, there was like $500-600 there without even like me thinking about it at a year. And I'm like, man, I didn't even like realize that. So I've done it for like 18 years, and I do that, and that becomes national money. I do a card show as a dealer, and it's a good show. Obviously, I put my sales tax money aside. I put money aside to buy new inventory for the showcases, and then I put money aside. Hey, this is going for end of July and August for the national. I sort of plan ahead, more so than the younger version of me that would just kind of fly by the seat of my pants. And it helps me to go to the National, right, and have some coin to spend and have fun, right? And again, it's not even all cards, right? There's other obviously expenses,
Yep.
flights, hotels. You're well aware, and dinners and all that fun stuff. That stuff will add up. So if you don't save and you're like, hey, I'm going, and you hear, and I've heard these horror stories. I'm sure you have too. With the National, people just run like credit card bills way up, and then after they get back home, they're like, I got to pay this all back, and I'll have a little bit of that. I don't want to be disingenuous, but not where I'm like really fretting over, like, oh my god, like I've already had a lot of cash that I brought with, or money in my, whether it be a PayPal or other cash account, where I don't have to use my credit card that much, and I'm not sweating it when that bill comes. But some people really fund the whole trip and what they buy on that, and then worry about it after the fact. I don't want to do that, so I get in real trouble.
It's tough. Yeah. It's the greatest show on turf. It's like, it's the Mecca. Everything is there.
Yep.
I can see you just, getting kind of caught up with, you're there with your buddies. You see a card you've been wanting, you're kind of mulling it over. I've helped my friend flipping Steve. He bought a Willie Mays rookie card at the Philly card show. Now he was planning to buy it, so it's not as if and he's really careful with his money, but I helped him buy it. I was telling him, I'm like, dude, this is the best copy in the whole show. I'm like talking him into it.
Peer pressure.
Yeah, I was the peer pressure. Now he had the money, and he was wanting to buy one, but he was kind of on the fence, like, man, is this the one? I'm like, this is the one, dude. This is the best. So that's probably happening every year at the National.
Yeah, and sometimes you need that. That's a good thing. Even like, not to keep referring back to the Jackie, but even with the Jackie, I had my friend Danny Black, who was like, it was really a decent deal, but I was having that self-doubt, right? And I'm like, you ask for someone else, hey, what do you think here? He's like, dude, you've been looking for this card. It presents well. You're not going to get it cheaper than that at this point. Like, you're either going to get it or just forget about it, like, and move on. And like, sometimes you need that. You need that person to sort of, because I think we have that sort of, the two voices on the shoulder, right? One's like, hey, pull the trigger, and the other's like, oh man, I don't know, think about this, and it becomes a tug of war. Sometimes we need that outside opinion, like, hey, that's a pretty good deal. And other side of that coin, right? Now I think you could get a better one, maybe even for a better price. Sometimes they'll help you to not make a transaction. So
what's kind of weird though too about those types of cards, like what you're talking about, is it's almost easier for me to buy a card like that where it's a genuine store of value. Whereas if you bought 10 cards that are, let's say they're $500 each, and that you buy 10 cards over time, maybe they hold up, maybe they don't, maybe they go down to 200 or something, but that's an iconic card. So even though that might be, and I don't know how much you paid, let's say it's a $5,000 card, and that's a hell of a lot of money, but it's kind of like when you're telling your wife, when you're telling your family, you can turn right around and sell it. It's worth what it's worth. Like,
yeah, it's funny.
Hold up.
It's a great point. You hit it right on the head, Dustin. It's funny you mentioned that too, because going back to the story, when I told my wife, and I'll be honest now, it's you can look it up and find out. It was $7,700 at the time. It's actually, like you said, it's actually more now if I was to resell it. So when I told my wife what it cost, and her jaw hit the floor, and I'm like, hey, now you know why I have that separate account. So none of that came out of our account. But she goes, you paid that much for one piece of cardboard, one card? Like, she doesn't understand the whole who it is and the iconic of the card. But what you just said is exactly what I told her. I'm like, yes, I paid that. But like tomorrow, I could probably get it all back. It's almost like it's still money. It's just in a different form. And anytime you need to liquidate it, if that's what I chose to do, it's still there. It's not like when you go to a restaurant, you have a great steak and it costs you $50 to $80 at like a Morton Steakhouse. The steak might be great. You enjoyed your 2 or 3 hours there with whoever you're with or your family, but the steak's gone. Like, you're not like it might be worth the bill you paid at the end of the night, but it's also gone. You got nothing to show for it other than
Well, it's like
a great
it's
memory.
like other hobbies that boating, golf. When you go play golf, you have fun. You have a nice round of golf. It's probably a couple $100, a few $100, and that adds up if you play a lot. Boating. Don't even get me started on boating. Like my dad's my dad's a fisherman, and he's got a boat. He's got to pay to gas it up. He's got to pay to he loves it. He loves it, but that money's gone once you spend it on boating. You have the experiences. But he can't get the money back. It's gone. Whereas the cardboard, you can get money back.
Yeah. And when I explained that to her, it made a little, not that it was her money anyway, but she got the light bulb went on, so to speak, a little bit. But, she got it a little bit. But probably would have had to do more explaining had that come out of like an account. Which it didn't. All right. That concludes part 1 of our conversation with Dustin, Sports Card Dad. But if you enjoyed that, come back next week. We'll have part 2 as well. So with that being said, we're going to have our Hobby is the People announcer of the week next and some closing thoughts. If you want to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, like you'll hear, just send me an MP3 or WAV file of you introducing yourself. Give me a free plug. And somewhere in there mention our tagline, right? The Hobby is the People. All right. Let's hear from our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Yo and hello everybody, Mike here, baseball collector. And remember that the Hobby is the People.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
Leave the gun. Technical knowledge.